Understandably, you'll be very concerned about what will happen to your children if you separate from your partner. Some of you will be so concerned that you're putting aside your own happiness and staying in a relationship you don't want to be in because you believe that's what's best for the children. And as you may have feared, the majority of studies have found that, on average, children whose parents separate do exhibit lower levels of mental well being, more emotional problems, and poorer physical health than the children of continuously married parents. But while your separation or divorce will put your children at increased risk for negative outcomes, these outcomes are neither universal nor inevitable. You see, when we talk about parental separation, we are not talking about a single, isolated event, but a process that involves a number of risk and protective factors that interact with each other both before, during, and after the breakup to increase or limit the risk of adverse outcomes which are associated with the breakup of a family. In what follows, we'll consider those factors that research has consistently identified as the most critical mediators between a family breakup and the physical and emotional well being of your children. We'll also tell you what you can do to have greater control of those factors. Children are very sensitive to how their role models treat each other, and social scientists have identified parental conflict as the key variable in producing negative outcomes in children, regardless of their family situation. In this respect, whether a breakup occurs or not, parental conflict is associated with more anxiety, poorer health, lower self esteem, and a greater occurrence of problematic behavior in childhood. In fact, the children whose parents stay together but expose them to ongoing conflict have the most difficulty psychologically and the most problems in their adult relationships. What this means is that both children and adults are better off if a breakup removes them from otherwise high conflict situations, and especially when that conflict is frequent, intense, and verbally or physically hostile. It should be said, however, that continued conflict in the aftermath of separation is also very damaging to the well-being of children, and it's particularly harmful to children who get caught in the middle of that conflict and feel like they have to take sides or are somehow to blame for it. On the other hand, when separated parents can suppress their conflict, or at very least remove it from the lives of their children, the expected outlook for those children is much the same as for children from low conflict or no conflict families. The thing to remember here is whether you realize it or not, you're teaching your children, consciously and subconsciously, about relationships. The risk then, when your children are continually exposed to conflicts, is that they think it's normal and conflict is the natural and even acceptable response to disagreement. Such a belief, if internalized, could manifest itself in such a way that they either reenact this learned behavior in their own relationships, or they become so traumatized by your behaviors and their consequences that they avoid any kind of conflict and rarely, if ever, express their wants and needs. These kinds of eventualities can be allayed if both parents are fully committed to showing their children that even in the midst of separation, there is still room to compromise and work things out, and there is still an expectation that each parent will act respectfully toward the other. Which leads us to the next problem.